Pastor Ade arrived in Atarasele like a storm, his voice booming with promises of healing and salvation. The villagers, weary from years of hardship and sickness, clung to his words as if they were their last hope. Tales of his miracles spread quickly, crippled men walking, barren women conceiving, and fevers broken with a mere touch. The villagers marveled at his charisma. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face shining with a radiant confidence that left even the most skeptical mesmerized. His robes were pristine, flowing around him like clouds, and his voice carried a weight that seemed to penetrate the soul. His sermons were delivered with a conviction so fierce that even those who had once doubted the power of the divine found themselves bowing their heads in reverence. Chief Abayomi, the village leader, was the first to embrace Pastor Ade's arrival. His younger son had been suffering from a fever that no herbal remedy could cure. The boy's skin was hot to the touch, his eyes glassy with pain. Days turned into weeks, and his condition only worsened. Desperation drove Chief Abayomi to the preacher's tent. Pastor Ade laid his hands on the boy's forehead, chanting fervently as the villagers watched with bated breath. His voice rose and fell in hypnotic waves, each syllable thick with emotion. When he finished, he stepped back, his chest heaving as if he had drawn something out of the child's body by sheer force of will. The fever broke by morning. Chief Abayomi praised Pastor Ade as a true man of God, urging the village to embrace his teachings. News of the miracle spread like wildfire. Those who had been too weak to attend the preacher's sermons now crawled to him on hands and knees, their eyes glimmering with hope. Within months, Pastor Ade's church grew into the largest gathering in Atarasele. Wooden benches were added weekly to accommodate the swelling crowds. The villagers gave freely, coins, livestock, produce, to honor the man they believed was their savior. His influence spread quickly, his sermons pulling in desperate souls from neighboring towns. The old healers of the village watched with uneasy eyes. Their craft, passed down through generations, was being overshadowed by Pastor Ade's miraculous powers. They whispered among themselves, but their voices were drowned out by the congregation's fervent cheers. But not everyone was convinced of his holiness. Kamali, a sharp-eyed young man known for his restless curiosity, had watched the spectacle unfold with growing suspicion. He had always been one to question, to challenge authority where others dared not. As a child, he would sit for hours by the river, his gaze fixed on the horizon, his mind filled with questions about the world. He saw how Pastor Ade's hands trembled with unnatural intensity during his healings, his fingers twitching like claws. The preacher's eyes often gleamed feverishly, like a man drawing power from his followers' desperation. Kamali couldn't shake the feeling that there was something false about the preacher's miracles, something that made his skin crawl. Kamali spoke of his doubts to his closest friends, Ozioma, Femi, and Tond, under the shade of a baobab tree one evening. "Something isn't right about him," Kamali said, his voice low and urgent. "People who were healed often fall sick again. And when they do, it's worse than before. They say it's because their faith isn't strong enough," Tond replied, his eyes darting nervously. "Or that the devil is testing them." "No," Kamali insisted. "I've been watching him. The way he touches people, the way his eyes glow when he chants. It's not from God." Ozioma's eyes were red from crying. "My father was healed of his failing eyesight. But now he's completely blind. He said the light burned his eyes. And then he died." Her voice broke, and Femi put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "He's fooling everyone," Kamali said, his fist clenched. "And if we don't find out how, more people will die. What can we do?" Femi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The whole village worships him. Even the chief." "Then we find out what he's really doing," Kamali replied. "And we show everyone the truth." They decided to follow Pastor Ade after his sermons, observing him as he slipped away from the church under the cover of night. Kamali's suspicion grew when he noticed that Pastor Ade always left through the back door, avoiding the crowds and heading toward the dense thicket beyond the village. One night, Kamali tracked the pastor deep into the forest. Hidden among the thick foliage, he watched as Pastor Ode knelt beside the riverbank, chanting words that sounded like no language Kamali had ever heard. The man's hands drew strange symbols in the air, his voice climbing and falling in rhythmic, feverish patterns. The air grew cold, sharp, and unnatural. The darkness itself seemed to bend toward Pastor Ode, like smoke drawn to a flame. And then Kamali heard it, a low, rumbling growl that sent icy tendrils through his veins. It was not human, not animal, but something far worse. Kamali fled before the ritual could end, his legs trembling as he tore through the forest. He returned to his friends, his face pale and his words frantic. "He's doing something evil," Kamali whispered. "Calling upon something that shouldn't exist." "But how do we prove it?" Femi asked, his voice thick with fear. "Everyone adores him. If we accuse him without proof, they'll turn against us." "We need to record him," Kamali replied. "If we can capture his rituals, then no one will be able to deny the truth." Their determination led them to the bustling market fair in Komu, several miles from Atarasele. There, they found a merchant willing to sell them a tape recorder, but the price was far beyond what they could afford. "Please," Kamali begged. "We need this. It's a matter of life and death." The merchant's gaze was sharp and calculating. "You want the recorder? Then work for it. Deliver these goods to the next village, and it's yours." Kamali agreed without hesitation. He carried the heavy load through rough, winding paths for 2 days, his muscles burning and his skin scraped raw by branches. But when he returned, the merchant honored his promise and gave him the recorder. They spent the following nights recording Pastor Ed's rituals. Hidden in the shadows, Kamali and his friends documented his guttural chants, the twisting symbols he drew in the air, and the terrible growls that seemed to come from nowhere. The tape recorder, its metal frame cool and solid, became their most valuable possession. The recordings were terrifying. Pastor Ed's voice, distorted and strained, rose and fell like a madman's dirge. The words were indecipherable, but their power was unmistakable. And always, beneath the chanting, came the growls, deep and feral, like something clawing its way out of the depths of the earth. Ozioma's hands trembled each time they played back the recordings. "It sounds like the devil himself," she whispered. "It's worse than that," Kamali replied, his eyes dark and haunted. "Whatever he's calling upon, it's not just evil. It's hungry." Salem, a traveler who had heard of Pastor Ed's miracles, arrived in Atarasele just as Kamali and his friends gathered enough evidence. Unlike the villagers, Salem was not fooled by the preacher's charisma. He had encountered false prophets before, men who drew power from darkness. Salem was a tall man with eyes that seemed to see through everything. He wore simple robes, his hair streaked with silver, and his voice carried the weight of countless journeys. The villagers treated him with caution, unsure of whether to trust the stranger who asked so many questions. But Kamali saw something in Salem's gaze that eased his fear. He approached the traveler one evening, their conversation held in hushed tones beside the river. "You've been watching him, haven't you?" Kamali asked. Salem nodded. "I have seen men like him before. They prey on the weak, drawing power from their suffering. But your pastor is different. His power is stronger. More dangerous." Kamali's eyes narrowed. "How do you know?" Salem's expression darkened. "Because I have seen what men like him leave behind. Villages reduced to ruins. Families torn apart by madness and despair. Whatever he is drawing upon, it is not from God." Kamali shared their recordings with Salem, who listened with a grim expression. As the chanting poured from the tape recorder, Salem's eyes grew colder, his hands clenched tightly at his sides. "He's not praying," Salem said. "He's invoking something. Feeding off the people's pain to strengthen himself. How do we stop him?" Kamali asked, his voice desperate. "With the truth," Salem replied. "You have the recordings. But words alone may not be enough. The villagers are blinded by their faith in him. If you confront him, he will try to twist your words. You must show them what he truly is. Kamali's gaze hardened. We will. We'll expose him for the monster he is. With Salim's guidance, Kamali and his friends planned their confrontation. It would happen during one of Pastor Aid's most crowded sermons when the entire village would be gathered to witness the truth. The night of the confrontation arrived. The church was packed, the air thick with the scent of sweat and incense. Pastor Ade stood at the front, his voice rising like a wave as he preached of miracles and salvation. His followers swayed with devotion, their eyes glazed with fervor. Kamali, Salim, Ozioma, Femi, and Ton stood at the back, their faces pale but resolute. Kamali's hands shook as he clutched the tape recorder, the metal biting into his palms. It's time, Salim said, his voice calm and steady. Are you ready? Kamali nodded, his throat dry. Let's do this. They pushed their way through the crowd, their presence drawing curious and suspicious glances. When they reached the front of the congregation, Pastor Aid's eyes locked onto them, his expression one of fury and disdain. What is the meaning of this? Pastor Ade roared, his voice thick with anger. You dare interrupt the Lord's work? No, Kamali replied, his voice stronger than he expected. You're not doing the Lord's work. You're feeding off our pain. You've been lying to us all. The crowd murmured, their confusion rippling through the air like a fever. Lies. Pastor Ade screamed, his composure cracking. These children are poisoned by jealousy and sin. They seek to destroy the blessings I have brought you. Blessings. Ozioma cried, her eyes blazing with grief and rage. You killed my father. Whatever power you have, it comes from something evil. Enough of your foolishness. Pastor Ade shouted. I have healed you. I have saved you from suffering. And this is how you repay me. Salim stepped forward, his gaze steady. No. You have used their faith against them. You have fed off their suffering, drawing power from their pain. But now your lies are laid bare. With that, Salim pressed play on the tape recorder. The church filled with the sound of Pastor Aid's guttural chanting, accompanied by the monstrous growls that had haunted Kamali's dreams. The villagers recoiled, their faces twisted with shock and horror. Do you hear it? Kamali shouted. This is what he does while you sleep. Calling upon something evil to make himself stronger. Blasphemy. Pastor Ade shrieked, his eyes wild with rage. They are deceivers. They seek to corrupt your faith. No, Salim said firmly. The only corruption here is you. The villagers' loyalty fractured. Some screamed accusations, others wept with betrayal. Pastor Aid's influence crumbled before their eyes. His voice, once so powerful, now sounded small and desperate. You think you can destroy me, he roared, his voice trembling with fury. I am your salvation. Without me, you are nothing. No, Ozioma replied, her voice clear and strong. You're the one who's been destroying us. The congregation erupted into chaos. Some turned on Pastor Ade, their anger fierce and unrelenting. Others fled from the church, their minds unable to reconcile what they had just heard. The villagers dragged Pastor Ade from the church and cast him from the village, his furious cries echoing into the night. He stumbled through the darkness, his once grand robes torn and dirt-streaked. The power he had wielded over them was shattered, his deception laid bare. Salim led the villagers in cleansing rituals meant to purify the church and reclaim their faith. They burned the symbols and charms Pastor Ade had left behind, their smoke rising like prayers of purification. Kamali emerged as a leader, his courage and determination earning the villagers' respect. Salim remained in the village for several more weeks, guiding them as they rebuilt their faith, not in false prophets, but in themselves. Years passed, and the memory of Pastor Aid's deception faded. But Kamali never forgot. He remained vigilant, determined to protect his village from any darkness that dared to return. "We faced the darkness," Kamali whispered to himself one evening. "And we overcame it." The shrine's fire burned bright. And Kamali knew Atarasele would remain safe for generations to come.